exciting presentation for us. But first, it's my privilege to introduce a key leader in California water, California Natural Resources Secretary Wade Crowfoot. Secretary Crowfoot has served since 2019 and advises Governor Gavin Newsom as a member of his cabinet. He leads an agency of over 25,000 employees spread across 26 commissions, conservancies, and departments, including the Department of Water Resources. He's been on the
again, and incredible to see how big and diverse and important ACWA remains. You know, as I was thinking about this moment in time walking over here today, I reflected on being on a similar stage just under 8 years ago. It was ACWA's winter meeting in Southern California. Gavin Newsom had just been elected governor, but had not yet taken office. And in those couple of days, I remember the key question that many of you and many of our colleagues are asking is, would the new governor lean in on water? Would he actually prioritize a complicated, conflict-ridden topic, given all of his priorities and all that was challenging the state? The good news is he answered that question quite quickly. In his first State of the State, in his second month, he leaned in and confronted one of the largest challenges we have on California water, modernizing the backbone of our systems, the California State Water Project. He also leaned in and confronted and took on, in that first State of the State, the biggest vulnerability of the backbone system, which is, of course, the Delta. Weeks later, he directed through executive order agencies like the one I lead to come together with you and so many other important partners and do something we had never done in California. Build a comprehensive yet detailed roadmap that we can hold ourselves accountable to meet, which was, of course, the Water Resilience Portfolio. And there began 8 years of a journey of partnership, of progress, of forward action. So as we round third base and charge home, and I can tell you there's a lot more work that we're focused on getting done this year, it is a moment to reflect on the last 8 years. And true to form, Gavin Newsom was not going to farm that out or delegate that. And he wanted to be here with you today to give his perspective, share his perspective on this journey that we've been on together. So please join me.
Stood up, I haven't even said a word. You may want to wait to applaud. It's an honor to be with all of you, and I just want to thank and welcome you all back. Many of you that have been here for many, many years, as Wade was reflecting on his journey going back 8 years. I want to briefly do my best to sort of paint a picture of the journey that we've been on together over the course of the last 7.5 years as well. Some of this is very familiar to you, some of it may anger you, challenge you, but nonetheless, I think we all share one thing in common. We've chosen a profession with forever problems, and water is the forever problem. It seems like forever ago, I was Lieutenant Governor watching then Governor Jerry Brown struggling with managing Mother Nature. Bats last and bats 1,000. She's chemistry, biology, and physics. 2012, that was pretty evident. 13, 14, 2015, 16, 5 years of historic drought. I remember in 2015 that historic and iconic photo of Jerry Brown as we were up there doing our annual snow survey, the lowest snowpack in recorded history in the state of California. Fast forward, seems like a few months later, all of a sudden this massive snowpack. And then those atmospheric rivers, early January, February, and warm weather that precipitated in that Oroville spillway calamity in 2017. 2018, it just seemed to be a lot of stress, a lot of anger, twin tunnels, litigation, binaries, voluntary agreements were part of the conversation, but no one wanted to voluntarily agree. Salton Sea was struggling. Folks in Imperial and Riverside were angry. What about us? Health impacts and asthma. Salmon were sitting there saying, wait, forget the salton sea, what about us? Issues in the Klamath were being debated, decade conversations, Yurok, Karuk, tribes, our friends up north in Oregon. There was just general stress and anxiety, including Prop 1. What the heck was going on with Prop 1? Why can't they build something? What is wrong with this state? It was an above-ground storage debate. No, it's below-ground storage. Meanwhile, just build anything. Sort of marked that moment, 2018, 2019. But I'll never forget walking in 2019 to the screaming headlines that were indelible to me. 1.6 million people without access to the wealthiest state, the wealthiest democracy God has ever conceived. 1.6 million people didn't have access to safe drinking water in the state of California. Arsenic and lead, which led me as governor, just days after being sworn in as governor, to surprise my cabinet secretaries. They all showed up. Everybody, trying to impress me, keep their jobs, a few new folks. And I said, guys, put your cell phones down. We're going on a little field trip. No one knew where we were going. We took them outside the Capitol. We had 2 buses. And we all went up to Monterey Park Track, the Central Valley. And we visited a school, and we visited members of the community without access to safe, clean drinking water. They lamented that they were spending more money on water they could not consume or even bathe in than the folks in Beverly Hills. It marked a moment again of consciousness, accountability, and responsibility to do something. We signed shortly thereafter an executive order, what ultimately led to a Safe, Clean Drinking Act that generates $130 million a year to address that issue. But we were in the process of trying to solve problems. Not an indictment of Brown, quite the contrary. He was trying to balance all of these things and try to advance many of these causes, including safety, which I'm hardly naive to where we were at the time in 2019, 2020. Fast forward a few months later, after our trip up in Monterey Park Track, it seemed pretty evident that we weren't tracking our water policy, the kind of specificity and detail, the science and monitoring that it deserved. And so we put out another executive order, this time saying it's time to put together a water portfolio. About 14, 15 months later, in 2020, that water portfolio was published just before COVID. At 142 action items, so many of them familiar to so many of you, around groundwater and recycling, issues related to storage, and we highlighted salton sea. We highlighted Klamath. We highlighted the need for a salmon strategy. We highlighted the need to address conveyance. We highlighted the need to address permitting and streamlining in that report, 2020. As we navigated through the headwinds of stress and anxiety, doubt, recrimination, we continue to work our way through a lot of those priorities in as transparent way as we possibly could into 2021. 2022, we realized that we were back in a drought. And with this 5-year historic drought, 2020, 2021, we're like, can't be happening again. Following up even to 2022, you recall those were the 3 years consecutive drought, the likes of which we had never had consecutively in our state's history. 2 times in 15 years, millennial droughts. A chance 1 in 1,000 that either of them would happen. They both happened in 15 years. This weather whiplash. All of us recognizing we had inherited laws on, you're intimately familiar, 19th century laws on water policy, 20th century infrastructure, but now with this weather whiplash, 21st century problems. The hots were getting a lot hotter, the dries were getting a lot drier, and the wets were getting a lot wetter. That's a preview of 2023. And so in 2022, we realized we needed to finally move away from the timidity that marked even the portfolio strategy. And it was time to get more robust, to get more aggressive, to move beyond those binaries and really start to strengthen and leverage our efforts. And that included on the voluntary agreements in the Sacramento and San Joaquin. And we finally landed in March of 2022, the Healthy Rivers, Healthy Landscapes, AKA voluntary agreements. We made a commitment, $1.1 billion would back up those voluntary agreements, to move away from the old binaries and litigation, to finally have science and monitoring strategies that would address the issue of river flow, particularly between January and June, to address the needs for fish. And 45,000 acres of fish habitat were set aside as part of that package, again, with real funding behind it. Progress. Made progress as well on the Delta, no longer talking about twin tunnels, we landed on a single tunnel, but with some intentionality, not everybody on board. But at least we started to break through. Wade and others started to break through. The folks in Imperial Riverside, because he kept showing up on the Salton Sea. We had a strategy, we had a plan. Investing unprecedented amounts of money, including getting the federal government's attention on the need for restoration down there. We're in the process as well of finishing up our hotter and drier plan in 2022. And this was a wake-up call. Again, we're now back in the second phase of this historic drought, third year of an historic drought, and the hots are getting a lot hotter, which suggests aridification, it suggests a different kind of hydrology, it suggests that we're no longer debating more water, and is that a growth strategy? We're debating water in the context of just scarcity. We're losing it. 10%. We estimated of all our water supplies will be lost by 2040, just with the status quo ante. It's getting a lot hotter. And so we came out with specific numeric goals in that 2040 plan, specific numeric targets. For the first time, 9 million acre feet of new supply. It was a supply-driven strategy. It was also a strategy very mindful that we had to be more aggressive about what was below the ground, managing recharge, addressing the issue again, back to streamlining and permitting, start to move forward more robustly across the spectrum of the recommendations in the portfolio strategy, but also move forward together. It was a bottom-up plan, not a top-down plan. Regions rising together, represented enough, 470 agencies. And that was a shift. We're not selling down a vision. It was a vision that has to be realized locally. And so it was about partnerships. It was about capacity building. And it was about addressing critical needs at the local level. Localism in water policy is determinative. And we laid that strategy out in a way that the legislature finally came on board and enthusiastically embraced it and codified it with SB 72, creating, again, numeric goals for the first time. 2023, we all remember it. Some of you more than others. A lake reemerges. Some old enough to remember the last time. Tulare Lake. All those deaths related to those floods. 31 atmospheric rivers. 3-year historic consecutive drought broken by 3 weeks. 31 atmospheric rivers. I remember it like yesterday, sitting in the Office of Emergency Service going, what the hell is going on? Working in partnership with our federal folks, NOAA and others, forecasting, pre-positioning. I'll get to that later. Partnership. Open hand, not a closed fist for the Biden administration. 2023. Whiplash. Weather whiplash. Extreme, the likes of which are now, as we said, the new normal. So 2023 also then marked a much more aggressive consciousness that, all right, we're done talking about sites. We have to have our sight on real permitting reform. And we finally got historic permitting reform done through the legislature as it relates to CEQA litigation, getting 270-day cap on that judicial review. We finally got serious about the Delta conveyance, and we finally got that EIR done. We finally got the $200 million agreed to and set aside on the community benefits if and when we move forward with construction. We finally got the incidental take permit done. We finally were moving forward aggressively, including, by the way, thank you, Met. That met the moment and stepped up with $141 million that year in 2023 to help with the permitting and planning to finally get this project moving. If for no other reason or recognition that it's a climate adaptation project. And it's on all of our watch when, not if, that earthquake happens. And we see what happens to those levees. And we see what happens, not just the folks, 27 million of us. They're not all down in Southern California, they're also in Silicon Valley. That will be relying on us doing something about it. Not an individual thing, but here are the new water czars in California. They were introduced to us. You know, I don't need to be crass, but they may have, graduated from Hustlers University or something, manosphere. But this is serious business. And most of 2025 was marked by this. If you recall, we can talk about records of decision, we can talk about buyouts, get on all those things, back and forth. Again, I went back and forth to Washington, D.C., meeting with the president personally on this. Behind the Resolute desk, as he's showing me photos, showing me this map, which, by the way, does not include water going to Southern California. And I was reminding him that his own map doesn't even show that it's possible. I'm done with the politics. But it marks so much of where we are in 2025. So let me talk just very briefly and close up. 2025, a lot of wonderful things happened. 2026, I think even more wonderful things are happening, despite some of the headwinds in the white waters and some of the challenges that we face. Salton Sea, I was just down there, first conservancy that we've established in 15 years. 9,400 acres being actively invested in. $500 million has been invested down there. Community finally saying, all right, maybe are starting to pay attention. 2025, we laid out that salmon strategy, 21 new hatchery investments. We finally reintroduced Chinook salmon down in the cloud. We're making real progress. Issues around pulsing, cold water, finally put out a strategy, making the case for the salmon. We talked about the case that was made, that was realized, the planning. Finally, again, continue to move forward with the Delta, including the Delta Stewardship Council and their record certification just a week or so ago. Progress in this space. On Prop 1, 1,938 projects, 20 programmatic areas, strike teams in our office. Sites move forward 148 days, not the full 270 as it relates to judicial strategy. Other projects moving forward, below and above ground. Real progress, more transparency. And over the course of the last 7 years, $11 billion has been invested in water infrastructure. 6.5 from the general fund. That's often forgotten or overlooked. And of course, investments in the bond. More streamlining, more work to do. And I'll conclude with that. As we move forward, we have to finish the job. Got to maintain the vigilance on these voluntary agreements. At peril, we go back to our old ways. We've got to do the groundbreaking at sites. If you can't agree to an off-stream investment, in this world, the weather whiplash, we're as dumb as we want to be. The Delta, if we had had it last year alone, the Delta conveyance, if we had it last year alone, would have provided enough water in terms of what we could have captured with an updated system enough water for 9.8 million Californians need for over a year. Just last year, we could have captured that if we had the Delta conveys. We've got to get that done. And we've got to finish the job as it relates to all of these folks that are still struggling, hundreds of thousands of people, desperate for access to safe, clean drinking water. Nothing made me more proud on this journey, and I will finish, than being out there with a number of representatives, maybe a few of you, in the backyard of Carlos Sanchez in East Orosi, where I signed a number of bills. A community with 120 people, maybe 160. Sewage system didn't work. Promises were made for decades and decades. And the emotion being up there in her backyard as we made commitment. And just a week or two ago on Earth Day, they finally broke ground on a water system that will connect all the households in that community. That's following through on our commitments. And that's the baton that will be passed, yes, to the next legislature, certainly the next governor. But that's the weight all of you continue to carry. And so this is a long way of just saying what I could have said. Thank you. Thank you for your stewardship. Thank you for faith and devotion to this cause that can be frustrating, as we began with. Thank you for your collaborative spirit that defines this organization. Thank you for your wisdom, particularly in appointing Carla Nathan as your new director. You have chosen wisely. They say it. I don't think that, I know that. You have chosen wisely. Thank you to Wade Crowfoot and the Natural Resources team for their tenacity. Thank you to the legislature for stepping up over the last many years, particularly on the streamlining permitting. Got to accelerate that work. To the water board and my friends, gotta move. We gotta move faster. Move faster. We all have to be held to a higher level of accountability. So I'm here, again, talking about the journey we've been on together. I love this stuff. I love the work you guys do. I love this. This is vexing and challenging. I remember March, I felt like we had solved Middle East peace when we did that first deal in San Joaquin and Sacramento with the VAs with Ana Montesantos. I said, this can't be done. We did it. Of course, there is no having made it. Success is not a place or definition. It's a direction. And so we'll continue on this journey together in different roles and different capacities. But again, ACWA, you're the real deal. You're that last mile. You're the folks that deliver on what we promote and what we promise. You are the ones that not only get it, but you get things done. And so I just wanted to come back and bookmark a little bit of where we've been and where we're going. And not only as I end, thank you again for what you've done, but more importantly, I thank you for all of the extraordinary work yet to be done that I have all the faith and confidence that you will accomplish together. Thank you guys very much.
On behalf of ACWA, I want to express our sincere appreciation to Governor Newsom for taking time out of his busy schedule to attend our conference today. We value your partnership on so many critical water issues. We recognize and thank you for being a governor who has prioritized critical water issues, such as investments in infrastructure, setting bold policy goals for water supply, and streamlining the regulatory process, among others. Thank you again.